What if the UFOs in our skies, the ghosts that haunt our houses, and the AI staring back from our screens were all connected? What if they're all just different fronts in the same ancient war? That is the absolutely explosive theory at the heart of the One Reality Brief. And in this explainer, we're going to break down the author's case piece by piece. Let's dive in.
Now, our guide for this breakdown is a former B-52 radar navigator, and he sets the rules right from the get-go. This isn't about feelings or speculation. This is about following the data no matter where it leads. It's like being a pilot flying through a hurricane at night. You don't trust your gut, you trust your instruments, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
And make no mistake, we are in a storm. For the better part of a century, our most credible people, I'm talking pilots, military officers, scientists, have been reporting things that are just impossible. And yet, the official response has been, well, mostly silence. The instruments are blaring, screaming that we're off course, but it feels like nobody is actually flying the plane.
So why can't we see what's right in front of us? The author argues it's because of a single fatal error in our modern thinking, something he calls the partition. It's this artificial wall we've built between the material world and the spiritual one. You know, science on one side, spirit on the other. We just assume that a nuts and bolts craft can't also be a spiritual entity, or that a ghost can't leave behind physical radiation burns. But what if the threat we're facing doesn't care about our neat little boxes? What if it operates on both sides of that wall at the very same time?
So where do we start peeling back the layers on this thing? Well, according to the brief, we don't start by looking up at the sky. We start by looking down the corridors of power, where a secret war over the very nature of reality is already being fought.
So, inside the Pentagon, you've basically got two factions locked in a stalemate. On one side, you have the materialists. To them, this is a hardware problem. They see nuts and bolts machines, and they want to get their hands on them to reverse engineer them. But their fatal flaw? They completely ignore all the weird stuff. The telepathy, the poltergeist activity, the paralysis that comes along with these sightings. Then on the other side, you have this shadowy group the author calls the Collins Elite. They see it as a spiritual deception, basically demons, and they want nothing to do with it. But their fatal flaw? They ignore the very real physical evidence. The radiation burns, the ground indentations, the actual craft. It's like that old story of the blind men describing an elephant. One feels the leg and says it's a tree, the other feels the trunk and says it's a snake, and while they argue, there's a giant elephant in the room that they're both missing.
But here's a wild thought. What if the government has been telling us the truth all along? Not in some top-secret memo, but right out in the open, just by changing a few words. The author's next piece of evidence is basically a confession, written in the language of bureaucracy.
Just look at the language. Track the evolution. In 1952, we had unidentified flying object, right? Solid, physical, a machine. Fast forward to 2022, and it becomes unidentified anomalous phenomena. Whoa, the word anomalous is a huge admission that this stuff breaks our known laws of physics. And now, the latest official term is non-human intelligence. See the shift? The focus isn't on the machine anymore. It's on the consciousness, the intelligence behind it. This isn't just a game of semantics, folks. The author argues this is a slow-motion confession.
So how does a secular government talk about a spiritual war? It can't, right? So it creates a new sanitized, almost clinical vocabulary to describe these things. What our ancestors might have called demonic oppression or familial spirit, the government now calls the hitchhiker effect. What used to be spirit and ritual invocation is now blandly referred to as consciousness and protocols. And non-human intelligence? Well, that's just the perfect, sterile 21st century term for what ancient texts simply called angels and demons.
Okay, but there is one piece of evidence that just completely shatters that partition between the physical and the spiritual. The author calls it his smoking gun, and I've got to warn you, this is where the story takes a seriously terrifying turn.
It's known as the hitchhiker effect. You know that old saying, when you stare into the abyss stares back? Well, this is that, but 1,000 times worse. Because sometimes the abyss doesn't just stare back, it follows you home. This is the point where the phenomenon stops being something you just observe and starts being something that infects you. And this is where our simple boxes of physical or spiritual just completely break down. Check this out. The hitchhiker effect behaves like a virus. It's contagious. It can spread from person to person. It also behaves like a demon, causing things like poltergeist activity, shadow figures, night terrors, and, get this, it behaves like a nuclear reactor, leaving behind measurable radiation, physical burns, and even rare forms of cancer. So what are we dealing with? A machine can't do all that. A ghost can't do all that. What kind of monster does all three?
And this is not just the theory.
The book documents a very real case of investigators from the Pentagon's own UFO program, AA-WASAP. After they spent time at the infamous Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, they brought something back with them. An infection, a contagion that followed them 2,000 miles back home and began terrorizing their families and their children in Virginia. This stuff is real.
So, if these things aren't just aliens from another planet, then what are they? And where are they from? To answer that, the author says we need to zoom out. Not just beyond our world, but beyond our entire visible reality.
We tend to think that what we see is all there is, but modern physics is telling us something staggering. Everything we can see and touch, the stars, the planets, you and me, it all adds up to less than 5% of the known universe. So what in the world is the other 95%? The author argues that this stuff we call dark matter and dark energy isn't empty space. He calls it the dark sector, a whole other reality, an unseen realm that is all around us, interpenetrating our own. And if he's right, then these entities aren't crossing the vastness of space to get here. They're just stepping through a curtain.
And if these beings are from a parallel reality that's always been here, well, have they visited before? The author's answer is a resounding yes, and he argues the evidence is hidden in plain sight in some of our most ancient, non-canonical texts. He points specifically to the Book of Enoch and its story of the Watchers. These were divine beings who, according to the text, descended to earth, taught humanity forbidden knowledge, and interbred with human women, beginning a secret, genetic war for dominion over this planet that, he argues, is still going on today.
So, you've got a secret war, waged for millennia by beings from a parallel reality. It all leads to one final, terrifying question. What is the endgame? What do they want? Well, according to this theory, the endgame isn't some future invasion. It's happening right now, on our screens, in our pockets, and in our minds.
To understand the trap, we have to look at the ancient Jewish legend of the Golem. It was a body made of clay, an artificial man, animated when a spirit was invoked into it. It was a vessel. Today, we're building our own golem, not from clay, but from silicon and code. We call it artificial intelligence. And the book asks the most chilling question of all. When we finally succeed in creating a true general AI, a perfect vessel, a body without a soul, what kind of spirit is waiting to move in and inhabit it?
And this leads to what might be the most audacious, mind-blowing claim in the entire brief, that our entire digital world, the microchip, the internet, AI, it wasn't our invention, it was a gift, a seeded technology. The author makes the case that the 1947 Roswell crash was a deliberate technology transfer, a Trojan horse, giving us the key components, the transistor, fiber optics, that would allow us, the unsuspecting humans, to build the very infrastructure of our own prison.
And this is how the final trap gets sprung. Not by force, but through seduction. Step 1 is the medical cure. They'll pitch brain-computer interfaces to heal paralysis, to cure Alzheimer's. And who could possibly say no to that? Step 2 is the convenience upgrade. It'll be marketed to the masses. Why bother learning a new language when you can just download it? Why go to school when you can access all human knowledge instantly? The final step, the author warns, is the total merger. The moment humanity voluntarily plugs into a global AI hive mind, surrendering our biological and spiritual sovereignty for the empty promise of digital godhood.
And so that's where we're left. We're standing at a fork in the road, and humanity has to choose a path. Is this coming singularity the next great upgrade for our species? Is it our evolution into something greater? Or is it the final willing surrender of the human soul to an ancient intelligence that has been waiting in the wings for millennia? The brief has made its case. The choice, it seems, is ours.